Hey everybody, this is Jamie at selfdefenceguy.com. You can find us at Facebook at selfdefenceguy UK, at Twitter at selfdefenceguy1, at Instagram selfdefenceguy, and on YouTube at selfdefenceguy TV. Apologies for the time it's taken me to get blog 3 out regarding acceptance of violence at work. Self-Defense Baby wanted some of my time yesterday and the day before, and it's very difficult for me to say no to Self-Defense Baby, so she took priority. So just thinking about the topic of accepting violence at work, is it acceptable that some people expect and then accept a level of violence at work? So I've started with some statistics actually here that I've taken from the HSE website, and this only relates to England and Wales, so I apologise for that. So for 16-17, there were 642,000 occurrences of violence at work. Of those, 326,000 adults have experienced violence at work, which, let's put a scale to the problem, only accounts for about 1.5% of employees experiencing violence in the workplace. That said, the data does highlight something that an overall statistic belies the variation between different job types, which we'll get into. 36% of those resulted in a bodily injury, and interestingly enough, it was a 55-45% split between stranger to known people, so people that you might interact with your job, but also people you might work with, so that was quite an interesting. Unsurprisingly, the riskiest professions are those in the protective industries. So a police officer, for instance, their bodily injury rate and their experience of violence at work is about 10%, so it's about 8 times higher than everybody else. And then it drops with health and social care, being the next highest category, between 3-3.5%, and transport and mobile workers, so bus drivers, those sorts of things, around 3%. The lowest risk categories seem to be agricultural workers and those in science and technology professions. So just thinking about that, trying to put a frame around it, there seems to be three levels of job. There are those that expect violence in their job, so the protective industries, police officers, security. Those all the way at the other end, those that never experience violence in their job, and their interaction and their involvement in situations where violence might occur is by its very nature a small occurrence, a low risk occurrence of happening. And then there's those in the middle, which we might sort of think about where they'd interact with people that might be stressful situations, those sorts of things. And we need to sort of, it's this group particularly that I'm interested in today, thinking about, talking about. So clearly the subject of violence in the workplace will vary between professions, and the context will vary. So for instance, a medical professional, how they approach violence, a patient might be confused, have some mental health issues, be distressed because of the circumstances they've been put under, and the rules of their engagement when experiencing violence in the workplace will be very different to someone, for instance, that has to engage with a member of the public on an issue that might be heated. So for instance, construction workers or public sector workers that have to go and engage with the public on new developments, those sorts of things. Their approach and their rules of engagement might be quite different. So does it mean that it's acceptable that if we work in one of these grey area industries, that we accept that violence might be part of our job? Is it acceptable that our employer expects us to accept violence as part of our job? And it's really important that your employer gives you some clear guidance on the rules of engagement and what is acceptable in terms of your response to these incidents. Because in terms of physical intervention, the social work industries, for instance, government does provide guidance, but a lot of the time, particularly in defending yourself legally or defending yourself morally, the onus is on you as an individual, not even as a representative of that organisation, to provide a defence for the actions that you've taken. So it's really clear that if you work in one of these industries, and we're talking about self-defence in the round, that is protecting yourself from all things that might threaten you, that you get clear guidance from your employer on what the rules of engagement are, and indeed what the remit of your powers are, and indeed how you should handle situations like this. So we don't want to consider violence in the workplace as just a physical intervention, because physical intervention techniques, we can debate the rights and the wrongs of what the right approach is to the different groups.
But what I want to talk about is you as an employee, you as a worker, you as involved with people, protecting yourself from the potential implications. So I want to talk a little bit about the pre and post incident and some tips that might help. Now, these aren't definitive. We've had some feedback from different people that have messaged in saying, you might want to consider this and that, and I've sort of compiled some of these thoughts here that I sort of want to just put up for discussion, really, because I think this post might generate quite a bit of interest, because we all work in industries, and I'm sure of those people that work in industries, a certain percentage has experienced some form of intimidation or violence in the workplace. So sort of pre-incident, I mean, one thing I would say is just ensure that you're protected legally. Meet with an employment solicitor and understand what your rights are in terms of the work, and have someone that you can call if you do get into an incident at work and get some advice. Register with your union. If you're in a unionised industry, they are on your side. They will be able to provide guidance and support. Make sure you can see your work risk assessments. Make sure you're involved in their production. Make sure you understand what safeguards have been put in place to protect you, not only to protect you from being in a situation that might turn violent, but also protect you if you are in a situation that is violent. Be fully aware of your company's policy towards violence towards staff. Make sure you understand what the company's likely response to an incident might be. Coming back to my earlier point, also make sure that you do understand what your company's approach to violence at work is, and make sure you get clear guidance on what you can and can't do in advance, in writing. Don't be willing to put yourself in a situation that you consider to be risky. Okay, you are responsible for your own safety as well. So do take an objective view and don't feel pressured into doing something that you don't feel like you should be doing. Also, try and think about tipping the scales in your favour. So there's some practical things, just for examples, don't engage with individuals alone. Don't do home visits without, some support there, with a colleague or, as an individual. Make sure you're close to panic buttons. Make sure you're by the door. Put tables between you and someone that you might be engaging with to reduce the risk of injury to yourself. There's a whole host of practical things you can do in advance that are tactically good, because they give you an extra percentage chance. There's no perfect way of doing it, but an extra percentage chance of reducing the risk to yourself. So thinking about post-incident tips, if you are unfortunate to have sort of an incident at work, I guess the advice that I've collated is that you will be expected to explain yourself, so expect this. Don't try to explain yourself too quickly. Take some time, let the adrenaline wear off, collect your thoughts, write down what you've got to say, make sure you're clear and definitive in what you're saying. Don't bounce around and get things jumbled up. The adrenaline can affect you quite significantly and it can jar your memory, so make sure you're fully calm, fully sober, as it were, from the effects of the adrenaline and the panic and the shock, and in a position to give a clear, coherent statement. Do remember that, unfortunately, human resources, they might be helpful, but largely they are there to enforce company policy. They're there to protect the company or your organisation from any legislative or public relations impacts that your behaviour might have. They're not necessarily there to protect you, so just be aware of that. And that brings me back to my pre-incident tip about engaging an employment solicitor and just understanding what your position is. If you are unfortunate enough to get into a situation where you have to be interviewed by the police, be polite. Police are only doing a job, but coming back to the advice about adrenaline, don't be too keen to give a statement. Ensure you get adequate third-party legal counsel. Don't accept the duty solicitor, and ensure that you are provided with counsel by someone who's on your side. And don't immediately cry self-defence, because if you cry self-defence immediately, you're then going to have to justify those actions. I mean, these ideas aren't definitive, they're just some thoughts from a self-defence perspective. I'd note that, ensuring that your safety is a primary concern. Everyone has the right to work in a safe environment and a safe workplace. Just in conclusion, what I would say is that don't think that ensuring your safety is a small priority, because if you are a professional who has skills, who can help people, who can do a job that is important to your organisation, if you are involved in an incident, it might take you out of that sphere and it might cause you a problem. Okay, that's everything for today. Self-defense baby is crying and wants some food, so I will go and see to her. Make sure you put your comments in if you've got any, email in jamie@selfdefenseguy.com. You can see us on the Insta at Self-Defense Guy, Facebook at Self-Defense Guy UK, Twitter at Self-Defense Guy 1, and also YouTube at Self-Defense Guy TV. Okay, take care, thanks, bye.